Welcome back to episode 2 of the 2,000 meter record attempt Felix did. In episode 1, we went through Felix's background, the planning, the beginning of the expedition, and now we're going to dig more into the experience and equipment it used, and he also has some question for me in the end, so stay tuned for that. What was the most challenging part with your trip? You ended up, how many mountains did you end up with in the end, and how was kind of thing going in the end of August?
Yeah, so in the end it were like 173, if I'm not mistaken, in like 31 days. Despite like having some rest days in this period, which were not planned and like also weather dependent, I was for my planning I was on track. I had to turn around in Valdrasflühe once when we wanted to go to like the trip where you go to Eggen, like, and walk the whole ridge quite along. It's like not too technical. But
the Rasletin Traverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And there was like, I turned around with a friend. Like she came from Germany, and we did some trips before. It was super nice, but we really wanted to go some more trips there. But there the weather forecast was also quite bad. And like after walking in for 3-4 kilometers, I had the feeling of like not a good idea. I mean, when you have like 90 kilometers of wind or so on and snow and ice, the thing is like you can do it. I mean, you have the gear. I mean, it was also kind of crazy of like putting on your ice climbing boots in summer to go on a walk. But that's what you do when you have like these temperatures and these conditions. But when something happens during these conditions, everyone with good arguments says like, why the hell are you out in these conditions? It makes no sense. And it, like, rescue also in Norway is different, right? It just takes way more time to get to you. And like, as being part of mountain rescue myself, I really don't want to push it too far. I always want to come back from the mountains, and I want to be as responsible as I can. Everyone does mistakes also once in a while for sure, but then was the point of like, okay, no, the feeling says no, we have to turn around. And then starting this trip again was like, yeah, coming back to trips where you turned around and you know, like, that you have to walk in just the flat terrain for 3, 4, or 5 kilometers again. That was sometimes a bit hard. And especially on this day then that we had to turn around a second time because like the second, or like when I ended the project and we got down to Torfinsby, we were supposed to do like Leirungskampen, the summits there. And yeah, to turn around again on like such a long ridge was not easy, but also on the other hand, it was easy because the weather was like clearly saying like, no, you should not go there at all right now. And like realizing it's hard when your body and your mind, they just want to go, but it's just too dangerous and you can't really do it. I mean, other people probably would do it and it would go just fine, but I was not willing to take that risk at this point anymore.
But I also feel like on a project like this, you kind of, one thing is pushing it far on one trip, but if you're going to take all the mountains in a project like this, you can't push that far on many trips, then it will end up going really bad. So you kind of have you have to minimize the risk on every trip, especially after, for me, it was like after half of the mountains, then I was really reducing the risk in terms of like pushing. I was pushing less and less the longer I was in the project, because I felt like now I should really just control everything to have the margin on my side.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, I guess it's also I mean, paragliding also plays there into place. I mean, paragliding at one point was off the grid because of the heavy winds in general. Like, I mean, if it was only winds, okay, you can walk and that's fine. But also in Breheim, I had one trip where we also pushed it quite. We were in, like, we had hailstorm up on the ridge and we didn't see anything, and it was okay. But normally, if I was like asking myself, or like reflecting back on the trips during the project, like, would you have done this trip if it wouldn't have been in this project, in these conditions?
Yeah.
And the answer to that was no for some trips, of course, right? And it was okay, but it shouldn't be all the time like that, right?
Yeah.
As you said. And
you are walking on like a really fine line, and for me that was kind of the most challenging thing with the whole project. I don't know how you felt about it, like doing the safety or the risk management through the project when you are really tired. You have been hiking for 12 hours and then you're going on a new hike the day after, and then you should take really good you should really be able to managing the risk after you are tired and also be able to push on. And for me, I was on the longest push, I was walking without any rest days for just over 3 weeks, and then pushing it really hard then, and then also be reflecting on the risk management, like should we push more or should we just go down now, or back and forth. That was a really challenging part, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you only, like, depending on where you go, and I think that's the beauty and also the challenging part of the mountains. It's not the difficulty of the trip sometimes, because like you would say, like, yeah, okay, Styggedal or Skagolsryggen, that are technical, difficult traverses, rich terrain, you fall off your gun.
Yeah.
But the conditions were super good and I feel really comfortable in this kind of terrain. But suddenly you're standing on like an easy trip where you don't need ropes usually, but you have like frozen rocks and ice and you can't really walk without slipping. And suddenly that is the way more dangerous situation. Like, even though on paper it's just a simple walk in this project, right?
Yeah.
And
it's kind of the complexity of the whole project that's a problem. It's not the single trips in good weather. Then it's quite easy. It's like how we are able to combine it in a good and safe way. So the complexity is definitely the hardest part, and I think you almost have to try to do the project before you understand the complexity of combining everything, because when you're looking at single trips, it's like, yeah, Skagerdalsryggen is of course a long trip, but in like perfect condition, you have, if you use 2 days, 3 days, and then you could just rest afterwards, then it's kind of easy to do them.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, definitely, I mean, you experienced it as well, I would say, or I would guess, like the people that joined on the project, they were also like, like, it's hard to advertise some of the trips, to say, to get someone to join in, like, especially like at the Yandeby, the trips there that we did when, like, linking up, we were doing like 3 touring days there from Yandeby, and like 3 really long ones. And yeah, I was happy that Stian joined on that, because I was like, okay, it's gonna be hard to find someone who really wants to go on like 14 hour trips, like just back to back, and like also, yeah, like have fun there, right? Is I don't want to force people to join when they're like, oh no, I really don't want to go, right? But that people that also bring energy to the project, right? Because that's the fun then.
Yeah, I'm all often joking about the best thing was to have people for 3 days, because everyone is really motivated the first day, and then you can easily push them for 15 hours. And then the next day you had to do like a shorter day, because then they are super tired. and the last day you could push them really hard again because they are so happy they will go home after there. But I had, I wouldn't say that was a problem, but there was only 2 people that were joining me for more than one trip. More than 1 3 days, 4 5 days trip, like coming back another time. So I was struggling a little bit with that, and I could see like when you have tried the experience and pushed really hard for 3 days, you don't feel like doing that one more time during a summer.
Yeah, but some actually did some more trips even now when the weather got good again. So it was like, yeah, nice. So we prepared for the summer or the late summer, early autumn now. So we're really getting more into it. Or I mean, it's just fun to see that that we had like a great time together as well, like and that people were enjoying it, and there are definitely memories that you will never forget, right? And
And when you find out that you had to stop this project, was that something you started thinking about during the hike on Valdresflia, or was it when you got back home that you were kind of starting thinking like, okay, I probably just have to stop now?
Yeah, the thing is, when I was like investigating the long-term weather forecast for some days already, and I mean, as I said, I had the map on like the tours, and when I did someone, I put them off the map, so I always had like the overview of like which places I still had to go. And the weather forecast showed like bad weather everywhere. Before it was, as I had more tours in the beginning of the project, I could like switch places more often, but then like Rondane was gone, like Jende Alpene was done, which was like when the weather was coming in from the west, I was always like fleeing to the east because the weather stayed away there, right? But after most of the mountains there have been done, then it would have been like, Hurungane, for example, and still for some trips, and more the center of Jotunheimen, and also in Dovrefjell the weather was super bad. And I was hoping that it won't get that bad, but it got even worse. and I was lucky to also meet someone when we were doing one of the last trips, and he was going to Dovrefjell the day after with some friends to also do like a quite long run, also like really fast mountaineering, and I asked him to like send over some information about the conditions they experienced, and they also abandoned their trip, or like they had to turn around because it was way more frozen, and that was the good day. That was kind of the problem when I felt like, okay, it probably will be over, because like even the good weather days in the forecast were like so horrible already in the higher mountains. Like we had sun when we started, but up on the mountains everything was frozen over. You couldn't see it, and when it started snowing, then you couldn't even know if there was ice underneath or not. You were just sliding around. And that was like when I kind of prepared myself, I would say, some days before, because I was seeing the weather coming in, and I was like, if there's not a sudden change of weather. And the problem was like, it wasn't like, okay, 3 days and then it's sun. Like on the high mountains there wasn't any sun forecasted for like 2 weeks. And when there really comes 50 centimeters of new snow or more, that's not going away when we have temperatures at 1 or 2 degrees, but still clouds. So
had you been looking a lot of statistics beforehand? Did you kind of knowing how much snow that were coming in August, for example, on an average year, or had you been looking anything about the statistic before?
No, I haven't been looking at the statistics. I mean, I was kind of looking at when I was checking Peakbook at the routes. I was checking back a little bit already. Was looking for the trips that were in the kind of monthly range that I would be traveling in. to like kind of see like the differentiating conditions that you can get on these kind of trips, but also on some trips you don't have, like on some you don't really have any information or the link ups you were doing. And because also I guess which is one hard part of the project, that you have some peaks that you wouldn't do normally because they are just there on the list, but they are not beautiful. And most of the people, for a reason, don't go there. And yeah, so that was kind of where I was trying to check back on the conditions. And I mean, as I've been coming to Norway in 2023, I was kind of blessed with one of the best late summers or autumns, at least in Bergen. And I mean, I knew that it probably wouldn't be that good again, but that it would be like the wettest August in Vestland ever. Well, yeah. It's going from one extreme to the other, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's always difficult to plan. You just have to start and hope for the best. And
yeah.
What was the equipment you think was like the best you have, and what was the most unnecessary equipment that you brought on this trip? That is a question I've been asked quite a lot that people are wondering about.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the most unnecessary thing I brought on the whole time was actually only on one trip, and it was like Styggedal and Skargalsryggen. Because of the technicality of the Jadvasprint ascent, I decided to like that we should bring 2 ice axes, everyone. Well, no, that was completely unnecessary. We were just walking up there quite fast with 1 ice axe, and then you were dragging around 1 ice axe throughout the entire 2 days. And as a friend of mine, he was kind of lacking ice axe. We had to, like, the second ice tool was a nomic, so quite a heavy one. And yeah, that was like, yeah, that was super unnecessary, but it was at the start of the project. I really wanted to have like a more safety margins, like what if it is like worse, but there I should have like, yeah, that was just dragging around weight for the whole time. And yeah, the most useful piece of gear I would say was my 16-liter backpack, which was used for mostly, or like kind of every tour, except for the bivy tours, because it really forced you to like pack down really small. Also the paraglide and everything fits in there as well. So it really forced you to like not bring too much, and like also the food, then you stash something inside your helmet when you put it outside, so you really just use this less space to the maximum, but you can't like put in everything. If I would have had like a 25-liter backpack, it would have been sometimes too heavy, because I also like to use the space and then bring some extra gear. So having like a small weight or small size backpack was really key for me. And most important in Norway, waterproof things, either if it's jacket, trousers, boots, or also the backpack, because you go through shit weather in this kind of project, and you want to have like everything at least dry when you get to a place and sleep.
Yeah.
And
did you use waterproof shoes on the whole trip?
Not on the whole trip. I had like a variety of shoes. So I was mainly using like really lightweight mountaineering shoes from. I was lucky to have some support from Scarpa. So I had like a mixture of like ultra lightweight mountaineering boots to like waterproof trail running shoes, which I was using a lot when the weather was not good, but also like normal trail running shoes when the weather was really nice, or when it was sunny just for a day trip, then I could just use them. And
yeah,
that was a really good mixture.
Yeah. And lastly, with the equipment, what kind of safety equipment were you bringing on this trip?
Yeah, safety equipment is an interesting question. I mean, especially for Norway, I was getting myself like a emergency beacon with GPS, because like you don't have connection everywhere.
Yeah, like an inReach.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, not the InReach Mini, which everyone uses, but the Messenger, because that's like a longer battery life. And I was setting that up, but never really used it. It was just in the bag for if something happens, I can use it. So I wasn't tracking with that. For that, I was just using my watch. And I am allergic to bees, which makes it a bit hard because I always have to carry kind of an allergic set with an adrenaline pin and some medicine, which is quite heavy and takes up some space. But it has to go because, like, if it happens and I should have an allergic reaction, then the rescue is not there in time, probably. So that was part of the kit. And then depending on how big the tour and how the weather conditions were, I was packing like either a small bivy sack or a bigger one, depending on the temperatures. So like it's kind of just an extra rescue blanket, the small one. But the bigger one you can...
Did you use the space blankets, or did you use like this windproof things we have?
I'm not sure if it is the same, but the BB sacks are they are super small, lightweight.
And you could use it and pack it down afterwards.
The small lightweight one, that not, but I have a bigger one, and that you can use multiple times. Yeah, but that's also quite heavy. Yeah. And
I see.
Yeah, first aid kit. I had heavy painkillers always with me, like to if you should break your leg somewhere, that at least you can get yourself down to kind of a safe space. And I always have a SEM splint with me usually, which is kind of an aluminium splinter. We are used from mountain rescue, so it is like a basic kit that I carry around all year long in my backpack. So that is like the full emergency equipment there. I'm not saving. I could pack down like a smaller emergency kit for sure. But there I like to have like also the margins, especially in Norway when it's more remote than in the Alps.
Yeah, I think that's a more difficult thing with Norway, is that it's a lot more remote, and you have to bring more gear.
Yeah.
And like the last question would be like, will you try again?
Yeah, I knew that one was coming, and I had some... also, a lot of people were asking me that question already. Let's say I don't know. One thing for sure is that I want to do all the 2,000 meter peaks, as there are still some really beautiful mountains I want to go to. Either is it in the winter or the summer. With a lot of Norwegian friends, like Norway has a special place in my heart, and I will come back to Norway probably in the winter already. And so I'm gonna come back to Norway and doing the project again. I would think yes, but probably like in 2 or 3 years, as I have some other topics and other projects coming up for the next year at least, and maybe already the year after. And also, like, I would like to implement the learnings, and I would have a different approach to the project then. Like to make it a little bit easier or more flexible. But also I was thinking of hitting up Kilian about it, because I guess that would be the easiest way to like not... because if he does this project in that kind of way in one go, then it's really hard to find someone who can beat that, I would guess. And I actually wondered why he didn't do it yet, to be honest.
It's probably because he lives in Romsdalen, close to where I'm living, and we have so much nice mountains there, so it's not any point of going to Jotunheimen, I think, like when you live here, because you have everything you want there. And I know Kilian, he tried the record in Horungan a couple of years ago, so he had been a little bit there, but of course if he's try tries it, he will probably be able to do it in like 2 weeks or maximum 3 weeks. I think 2 weeks is probably the time he will spend on it.
Yeah, it's would be probably really interesting. Yeah, but I would also have a question for you.
Now you could ask me everything you want.
Yeah, because like concerning when we were talking about the style of doing the project. I mean, we've been in contact beforehand, and we're saying like, I was asking some questions about it, and but how was your style in general? Like, I mean, you were sleeping in a tent all the time, but how was it for you to have like to get around to other places, like transitioning to the other national parks, or like also having like support from friends, like at waiting with new equipment at one point if it was wearing down? How was that for you?
Regarding like how I was planning everything and going around. First of all, as you said, I was sleeping in a tent the whole time. So in one way, that was, for me, it was just a way I want to do it. Of course, it's making it a little bit difficult with drying stuff and things. But like getting around is always a problem on this project. And when I did the project, I didn't have the driving license, so I didn't have a car either. So I had to do everything without having a car. For you, when I saw you were doing the project, you were moving a lot around. You could do like Hurungane one day, and then you could go to Breheim and Rondane the next day. For me, that was kind of off limit. I had to go to one area and try to stick there as long as possible because the traveling was so difficult. So how I was able to get around was that I was having friends that were coming. Some of them had a car, and then I was, of course, able to use their cars to drive to new places. But then we normally were going to one places, like I was going to Memrudalen, and then I stayed in Memrudalen for 5 days or something, sleeping in a tent up there, having like the base camp, so we spent half a day trekking in. So I was really often hiking and making a base camp in like the ideal place, I would say, for the project, and I think that's a really big benefit. But the main reason I had to do it was because there was not any point of staying close to a car because I didn't have a car, so I couldn't have kind of the luxurious things in the car anyway. The tent was kind of the place to be, and I could sleep close to a parking lot, but then I would prefer staying more in like the remote places, so therefore I was hiking. So I was kind of really in one place for almost the whole time, where I had mountains to take there, and then I would move over to the next place. So that was one of the difficult parts, having to kind of plan. Okay, I have to be here for 5 to 7 days maybe, and kind of finding the ideal place to move to and just stay there. That was a really hard logistic thing to kind of plan. And I also, with my approach, it's like, it's nice to get to a place and just stay there. But I also had some problems when people were jumping off the project faster. So, for example, in Breheimen, my plan was to start at Sotasetra and hike all the way to Lom, just moving the camp through Breheimen and then take the mountains on the way. And I had this really good plan, but then I had a friend that was going to join me for, I think it was like 3 days or something, 3-4 days. And I was like, oh, but she has a car, and then we could do this in a different way. But then she ended up hurting her ankle real bad, so she was only staying with me for 1 day, and then I was stuck with this new plan without a car. And then I ended up renting an electrical bicycle. I was cycling, it was like 40 kilometers with an electric bike one way just to get to the place. And then I also took a lot of bus to different places. So that was the way I got around there. And regarding the equipment and stuff, I was lucky that I had a lot of sponsors, of course, and I also had a lot of equipment from other trips. So when I started the trip, I was bringing basically double up of everything because I didn't know what to bring and what not to bring. So I had like 2 extra North Face bags, really big ones, one with food and one with just extra equipment. And then I would just go into a D&T cabin and so like, I'm doing this project, could you guys just take care of this bag for me for 1 or 2 weeks? And then I kind of had a depot with some equipment, and probably after 3 weeks I saw like some other equipment like the toughest Gore-Tex jacket and pants I didn't have it to have, so I sent that back. So I was kind of optimizing more during the trip, but I had a lot of backup equipment just in case something will break. And kind of the main problem with equipment for me was, as you said, the rocks are eating up the shoes really fast. And it's especially a problem when it's really dry with this black moss. Yeah, that's brutal. So on like the worst part of the project, I was just using, I got a new pair of shoes sent from Alteryx Oslo. And then after a week, I had to ask them for a new pair because I didn't have any grip left underneath it because it was like, it was so brutal, the moss. And the shoes there are really good. I was hiking maybe like 70% of across Norway with just one pair, but now it was destroyed after a week. So I had to get quite a lot of shoes and also pants and shorts because they were worn out quite fast from just the moss and stuff. So I had to get some new equipment, and then I was just sending them like, yeah, you could you just send a new pair to Lom because I really need a new pair, and then they will send it, and then I had to go down to the post office and pick it up. So I had some problems there, and I didn't know I had to bring that many pair of shoes and everything. I think I worn out shoes and socks for like 16,000 Norwegian kroner in the end.
Yeah.
During the whole project. So it was quite brutal for the equipment.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's harsh terrain.
Yeah. So I hope that was answer to your question. And if you have more, you just have to ask.
Yeah, like on the trips. I mean, in how was it like the group of people when you were traveling with? How much was it? Was it like sometimes 2 or even 3 or 4 or even more? Or how was that for you?
Mainly, I only had one person with me extra. So ideally, I think 2 people was like the best. I had 3 people, or we were 3 people in total for some trips, because then it was like 2 friends that were joining me. And on the most, we were also on the Knutsdalstind Traverse, we were 5 people in total.
5? Okay.
Yeah. So I was like, if people want to join, they could just join me and I would do the best. Also in Hudringane, we were on one trip there, 5 people, I think. So it could be everything from 1 extra to 4 extra, depending on who that want to join me. I was like, saying that people could just join me if they wanted. And in the end, I had some glaciers left I had to cross, and then I just went out on Instagram and asked like, as long as you can stand in the end of the rope, that I will be happy. And then I just had like really random people joining me, and it was really interesting, and I didn't know anything about them before they showed up. And that was, of course, some challenging regarding that, but that was like the best way I could do it at that point. So
yeah, definitely exciting.
yeah, so that was I was kind of struggling from the middle of August to get the people on the last trips. And also when I was kind of pushing the hardest during the trip, then I had 2 friends that were really fit joining me, and then they were actually taking turns, like one rest day or just doing half the day, and then I was continuing just to keep the speed at the maximum, because that was after a little bit over a month, and then I was super fit. So then they were actually struggling to keep up for more than one day. People are always saying to me like, it's not that hard on the first day, and then I said like, yeah, but we're gonna do this for 7 days and
in a row.
Because for me, I was on the longest part of the project. I was doing 3 weeks or 22, 23 days without the rest day, and then just pushing super hard because I felt good and the weather was okay. So then I was like, I just had to push as hard as possible, but then I was super exhausted without doing any rest days at all.
Yeah, it's interesting, like how different approaches you can also have, like to like the rest day. Do you have like planned rest days? Do you stick to it, or do you just go on until you feel like you have to rest? It's
and you I think you also have more like the approach from the Alps, when you are kind of sleeping or waking up really early and then getting back early again. For me, I was normally sleeping until 7 or 8, so starting at 8 the latest. That was kind of my go-to, but I was really often pushing it out to 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the night. So I was it was really weird that I was back to camp before 8 o'clock in the evening.
And I think like comparing like the approaches, it's for the next time I would like change it a bit as well, and like, I mean, depending on the weather, which really forced me to move like this back and forth, because like the plan was also like to stay in one valley for 5 days and do all the trips in there, and then move to the next valley and move to Hurungan and do every trip in Hurungan and then go on. But to have like this approach of like still standing up early, but like setting a base camp where you also save like a little bit of back and forth walking if you have like sleep like close to a tech campground, or so on, to have like facilities like showers or so, like to save more on that. And but also like the food, definitely, like when you said like you have like this big bag, like probably most of it dried food, I guess, right? Yeah, and like that was like something that I underestimated, like to already like plan ahead when I do the next groceries, because I couldn't have that much food with me, because I was also traveling with kind of all my general stuff that I brought to Norway for 1 year in my small car, and it was like limiting me of how much food I could bring, and like all this kind of planning, like when to get the next food, where to get it, where are you passing, all this kind of things, and like really cut down on like the traveling back and forth time, and rather hope that the weather is stable, so you stay longer at one place and make the most out of it, and then I guess that benefits you in also doing it faster next time.
Yeah, because for me, I had the food for kind of the whole trip. I don't had to go to a grocery store. That was just a luxurious thing. So I had kind of a lot of porridge. I have all the snacks I needed. I had all the dry food. But what I also found out was that it was easier for me to eat the sausages because it was faster to prepare than the dry food. And the dry food is, of course, really fast to do, but it was like when I was getting back after 12 o'clock in the night, then every minute kind of count, and then it was faster to eating sausages compared to the dry food. But I would say I was mainly eating dry food for the whole trip.
Yeah. I really like to cook, which also took time. But then, like, especially on some rest days, have like cook with fresh ingredients or like proper cooking, which was really nice to like. Because I didn't use dry food actually.
You didn't?
Or prepared it myself, like that for bivouac. I have like a couscous mixture that I prepare myself pre-season and so on. But also because it's expensive to dry food, I have to say that I can just prepare a way much more lightweight couscous myself per dollar, if you want to say it that way, than like buying the dry food. Even though there's super good dry food out these days, but buying that for the whole trips, that would have been so much money.
Yeah, it's expensive, and it's that's definitely a really expensive thing to buy.
Yeah, and I mean, let's see how it goes in the future. I mean, as I said, I'm gonna come back to Norway probably towards the beginning of the year, and we are still planning out some stuff as well for ice climbing, and probably we're gonna have some presentations as well about the summer project, but also about our really successful winter expeditions. So maybe there could be another ski trip or something, and maybe
I see you around, and maybe we're able to get on a trip together.
Yeah, if the Norwegian weather is nice again.
It probably will be. It's nice now and then, I would say.
Yeah.
So really good to have you here, Felix. It's been really interesting to hear how your experience was and kind of how different our two approaches was on kind of the same project. That was super interesting for me to hear about.
Yeah, also interesting to hear some about your experiences, even though it's some years ago already, but I guess you will never forget about something like that.
No, I don't think so. And I will just put your link to your Instagram in the description, so if people want to follow you on new adventure, they could probably follow you there and send you a message if they have more questions. And
yeah, for sure.